No matter how hard the past, you can always begin again. This is a quote from Buddha. Today is technically part 3 of the Mad King's trilogy. That's is surprising to me as it is to probably you. I never really expected this to be kind of an ongoing story or series of podcasts, but it's had me reflecting a lot about the past, and that is what we are going to wrap up this 3-part series with: how to deal with the reality of what has happened. But this is generally, I think, helpful for anyone that's struggling with the past, not being able to let go or move forward, finding themselves stuck to old patterns or behaviors. And I want to share my own journey again with a little bit more focus and something that I used when I was really stuck up until recently. So today, let's talk about living in the past. Well, living in the past happens when usually something terrible has happened and you've been victimized in some way, or a series of bad events have happened to you, you've been mistreated. And it can look different to a lot of people. But generally, you start to see some similar themes or similar patterns of thinking. The first one is resentments. You start to internalize maybe mistreatment or events that you see maybe rightfully as a lack of fairness. And, in particular, with the trilogy that I'm talking about today, when you've worked for a Mad King, maybe the skills that you've squandered or you've let degrade over time from misuse or lack of use, it can lead to regrets. Looking back at that time going, I wasted so much of my life. I gave them my best and I have nothing to show for it. Or even having regrets about not standing up for yourself when you felt you should have. And resentments and regrets can often lead to hopelessness, where you start to doubt your ability, looking back saying, maybe I was never really that talented to begin with, or maybe this isn't really what I'm good at. You doubt your convictions or your values. Look at the way these people behave and they pay nothing for it. In fact, they succeed. Doubting those convictions, values, things that you held to be true, it starts to turn in your mind to this cynical worldview where everything is broken. And I know that feeling. I was caught in it for 3 years, and actually only quite recently, coming into 2025, am I living a foundation I built from those pretty terrible experiences. Building the foundation, asking myself, what is important, or what do I value, or what do I want my life to be? And then the hard part, living it. Welcome to the Sons of Men podcast, a conversation dedicated to meaning in the lives of men, offering a window into the life and trials of masculinity, where we talk about family, spirituality, creativity, and legacy to better understand each other and to offer solutions for the next generation of young men striving for a better future. I'm your host, Curtis Wiebe, a father and husband, and an advocate for men seeking to transform their lives and through strength, change the world outside their window. This is episode 18, Forest for the Trees. Well, the title is calling attention to what happens when we get caught in the details of the past and how that may potentially lead us to missing opportunities that lie ahead. I mentioned in the opening the idea of building a foundation. In a lot of ways, we do this internally and we live it out in the day to day, but sometimes it's good to actually sit down and assess through an inner dialogue, with a journal or exploring it in a much more conscious way. Asking yourself some important questions. What do you value and what do you want from life? When you're living in the past, it's kind of a comparison to these values. And again, it can be a means to clouding what is good and what you want from life. When I came out of these experiences that I've touched on in the podcast before, I had to do this self-assessment. And I think genuinely, I only really came out of it understanding and implementing it, like I said, recently. In those years, I had come up with this kind of philosophy, which I call the 3-pillar paradigm. And I have used this for everything. I have used it to create values in what I want from life, but I've also used it for creative explorations, finding a tone for a story, or making some thematic foundations for a new world that I'm creating, or studying characters. It's actually a pretty universal tool. But today I'm going to teach you how to use it to build a foundation for today and moving forward with some sort of objective truth set in place, which will be your guiding star so that you don't get caught up in looking at the past and living there for too long. You may look into the past as you're assessing, and that's okay. What about that experience did you not like, and how in the future would you like your life to be different? You're definitely going to be doing that over the course of this assessment. So the 3-pillar paradigm, it comes down to 2 basic ideas. A statement, what it is, and 3 pillars, what means I use to achieve it. So I'm going to recommend starting with a personal assessment. This is a question that you are going to be asking yourself of 1, what kind of man do I want to be? This is a hard question. I think it takes a bit of time to get past the first layer that we generally do as men. Rich, successful, adored. I think these are the simple answers, but let's look a little deeper. What kind of man do I want to be? And make a statement. I want to be a courageous man. I want to be a wise man. Calm, gentle, charitable. We're all different. We all have different values and different strengths. And that leads to the second portion. Once you make your statement of what you think would lead to a life of contentedness, what are the means by which I can achieve this goal? And essentially what you need to do is ask, if I am at my best, when you are feeling on top of things, when you are feeling in control, you don't feel anxious or fear, what are the key traits that you are raising that kind of define that statement above? Let me share mine. Obviously, I've been pretty open about my spiritual journey, and for me, that was kind of a defining feature of where I really wanted to push myself, which was difficult. I was dealing with a lot of negative behavior in my life, addiction obviously being one at the forefront, selfishness. I would say even I lived a very narcissistic life. And how do you break that pattern? By essentially humbling myself to say, I'm not the center of the universe. So my statement was very personal to me, and it was the guiding star by which I answered the rest of these questions. Who do I want to be? My statement was a godly man. Now, again, that can look different to a lot of people, and your statement might be something completely different. But I had 3 principles, the means by which I can make that statement true in my life, the person that I am. I had 3. Genuine, disciplined, and leader. Those are the three ways that I can achieve that success. And I have to be able to hold all three of those truths up to attain that goal. If one falls, if I become disingenuous, if I'm not being honest or giving people grace for mistakes or for actions that they take, if I'm not being courageous in my day-to-day life and pursuing truth, then I cannot be that statement. And each of those statements, genuine, disciplined, and leader, you need to kind of earn those words. What do those words mean? And again, use three words to describe what that word means. So you understand what kind of behaviors, what kind of actions you would need to take in order to achieve those three distinctive words. For me, genuine means being honest, giving grace, and being courageous. Disciplined, very simple, body, mind, and soul. I am and likely will always struggle with addiction. And by the grace of God, I'm clean and sober. But this one was one of the hardest for me to put up here. And I'm going to talk a little bit later about being honest with yourself in this assessment. I didn't want to put that one on there because a few years ago, I was still struggling with dependence on substances. But I put that there because I know when I'm at my best, I am disciplined with those things. And leader, I'm a listener, I'm a mentor, and I'm a servant. Servant gets a bad rap these days, but a servant is simply putting the needs of others before yourself. So I earn what those words mean. I label actions and behaviors towards those genuine, disciplined, and leader. This is going to take time, and it probably will require a few revisits. It will require you to be authentic, and it will require you to be brutally honest with yourself. Sit down with a journal, write these things down, write down behaviors that you don't like that make you feel weaker or hold you back from feeling free. And when you have razored down all of these traits and behaviors, make statements of goodness, statements of what you would be proud to be, and leave the negative behind. This is your opportunity to say, this is who I am, and you are laying a foundation for what you can build in the future. From there, you can do this same process and repeat it, but now taking it from outside of yourself out into the world. A good place to start is, what kind of husband do I want to be? If you're married or if you're dating somebody, what kind of boyfriend do I want to be? What are the traits? What is the statement that you want to make? For me, my statement was, I want to be a dependable man. And the words that I used to root that in place: safe, loving, and strong. And from there, you can think about, what kind of father do I want to be? And so forth. In all these different areas of your life, make some strong statements about who you are at the center of it, and be cognizant of it, and have a place that you can refer to this often. And from there, you might even talk to your spouse, your partner, and go through this same process, making statements of values you want as a family. Discover, like I did, that there are differing values that maybe sit in each other's hearts, but you've never talked about it. And try to align them into 3 statements. For us, for my family, our statements were openness, stability, and fun. Other families might look different. They might say ordered, adventurous. Your family will be different. And I encourage you to go through this process with your loved one. Once you've done this, you have created the foundation of your values, what you hold to be true about your life and what you want from it. And once you've worked through these foundational values, you can begin to ask yourself the hardest question of all. And this is how we take all of those experiences from the past, create this foundation, and say, what do I want from the future? And the question is, what is a meaningful life? I often put it in this framework: if I were to face the final moments of my life and I could look back across the history of everything that led me to my final moments and I was held accountable for them, what would I say I did with this very precious time I have on earth? So, make the statement, a meaningful life, and answer, as you did before with all of these other questions, the means. What are the 3 key things that would define this life, and earn those with some powerful statement? And I'm going to again share mine as a means for you to maybe understand how to frame these statements. For me, my 3 key pillars are: first, a worthy legacy by raising a loving, light-filled daughter, by elevating and helping my wife realize her vision and dreams, by leaving the world a better place than when I came into it. The second is to create beauty, to write fiction. I'm a writer, and that is something that I am so grateful that I have been gifted. And I want to really, especially this year, I feel this deep drive to finally create after not really for the past 5 years. Help others realize their vision and voice, and by building a company that celebrates art and the people who make it, not profits. And for me, of course, finally, is to share Christ by speaking in his name, by being an example, and by my gift of writing. Now that's me. That's my life. That is what I would say I could look back and proudly say, these are the things that I achieved with my life. And I could know that I didn't waste that precious time here on earth. And these sorts of statements are what will help you put the past to bed. Take all the experiences, everything that you learned, and build a foundation for the future. Because when you go through something, a trial, like a lot of my listeners have recently, it's hard to know where to begin. You're going to be stuck in a lot of these feelings. I know, I've been through it. Doubting yourself, feeling useless, feeling alone, feeling like a failure. And that hopelessness is devastating. I would love to be able to help anyone with this episode, maybe avoid it in the long term. And this process is hard. I know, because I went through it, and I had to be really honest with some of my failings as a man, as a husband, as a dad, as a friend, as a professional. You're going to face a lot of your failings. However, you're also going to discover the richness of your value and your gifts, your talents, your experience. So moving forward with this foundation, it's going to be hard. You're going to fail. But you can remind yourself in the darkest moments, or even maybe even the most joyful, of these statements, these important foundational truths. And as I said, don't be afraid to acknowledge your own weaknesses. Lay them bare. Do not deceive yourself. It's the most difficult. But you have to start by being honest with yourself, so you can build now toward the new. And remember, no matter how hard the past, you can always begin again. And until then, God bless.